short stack this time. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a January reading wrap up. Okay, I'm back. I just wanted to write like the order that I read all my books because I'm going to do it in order. And I also don't have all the physical books, so I want to make sure I include all the ones I read on my Kindle. But yeah, today I'm going to be doing a January reading wrap up. I read 10 books this month. And yeah, I'd say we were off to a pretty good start for the year. What are the stats? Let me look at my list really quickly. I have two thriller mysteries, 4 romances that are just romance, and then 4 fantasy romances. I would say it was a pretty good month. Most of the books were really good. So let's just jump right on into the video. First book I read, which I technically started in December, I believe. Actually, no, I didn't. I didn't start it in December. I think I did read it. Did I? No, I started this in January. None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. This was the first book I read this year. It is a thriller mystery. I'd say it's more of a mystery than like a thriller, but essentially what it's about is 2 women. One is a podcaster, one is just another woman from her town, and they end up having the same birthday, like they were born on the same day in the same hospital. And they run into each other and connect on their 45th birthday, I believe. Essentially, the woman who doesn't have the podcast wants to be interviewed on the podcast because she senses like a big life change coming. So it kind of is just a story that unravels. The ending isn't really a big shock factor. It kind of just leads you to what's gonna happen. So you see the whole backstory, like what leads up to it. So it wasn't like a surprise twist ending by any means. The book was still really good. I read it in pretty much a day. If the ending was like shocking or there was a big twist, I think it would have been a 5-star. Otherwise, I think I did give this a 3.5-star because it was really good. I love Lisa Jewell's writing. It was so fast and it was just so, like, she is such a good writer. I thought it was a very interesting concept. I just prefer her other books. It was still really good though, so I would give it a 3.5. Next book I read is Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. This was a book that I picked back up. I had DNF'd back in like October, and I've heard so many people saying it's such a good book. The ending is crazy, like immediate 5 stars. I think I read maybe 40% of it, 40 or 50% of it, and I was not a fan. I was so bored. Essentially, it is about a couple who is going to a weekend away in Scotland, and she won it as part of her work raffle. The guy in the relationship has face blindness, so he can't even like recognize his wife. And essentially they're just having a hard time in their marriage, and they're hoping that this weekend away can help them fix this marriage. But they're staying in an old church that was renovated into a home, and it's a big snowstorm happening. It's really isolated, super creepy vibes. It just wasn't very entertaining for me. It felt really like it was going really slow, and I didn't really care too much for any of the storyline. I didn't really think that the twist was super shocking, so I just kind of was very underwhelmed. It was like a decent read, but I think I gave it 2 stars. Third book I read was Enemies with Benefits by Roxy. Third book I read was Enemies with Benefits by Roxy Noir. It's an interconnected standalone, so it was the first book of the Loveless Brothers series, and I ate it up. I loved it. I loved the banter. I loved the tension. I just loved the characters and their connection. And it was childhood enemies to lovers. I also read this in basically a day. Just flew through it. It was so good. And at some point, I definitely want to read the other ones because there's 5 Loveless Brothers. So There's 5 books total. We got an introduction to all the brothers in this book. I loved the writing too. It was honestly like the perfect rom-com. Like just everything I needed. But I gave it 4.5 stars because I don't think about it a ton, but it was so good. It's just not one of those 5-star feelings. It was so good though. I definitely recommend it. Then we have Quarter Frost and Starlight. Obviously, this is the novella in the ACOTAR series. I gave this, I think, a 4-star. It was good. Obviously, you don't really need to read it. It's only about 200 pages. Oh, nothing really happens in here that you need in order to go on to the next book, but it was just fun. I could see how this would be a good refresher if you haven't read Accorda Silver Flames and you're trying to get back into the world, but there was nothing wrong with this. It was just probably like the least interesting book. There was just not really any action. It was kind of just following their lives, but it was still really good. I love the ACOTAR series. So yeah, 4 stars. It was just happy. It was just a good vibe. Then I read The Chase by Elle Kennedy. This is the first book in the Briar U series, which is kind of a spin-off series for her off-campus series. I do really like Elle Kennedy's writing and her storylines. They're just kind of fast-paced, but they're still good. However, I was not a fan of this book by any means. It took me so long to read. I actually had DNF'd it. Well, I didn't purposefully DNF it last summer. I just kind of put it down one day and I never picked it back up to finish it, even though I was like 60% of the way through. So I didn't really even read that much this past month of this. It was just the last half or so. I just didn't really feel the connection between the characters, the 2 main characters. It does say she's the one girl he shouldn't want, but there's like no reasoning. Like that's not true. And he just keeps complaining about how he doesn't do drama, how she's like full of drama. Like it was just, I was not a fan of their relationship. It didn't really make sense. It felt like it dragged on for so long, and there was so much buildup for the first like 60-70% that the rest of it was then the book that was interesting, and then it kind of didn't wrap up. Like I felt like there were a lot of things that just weren't wrapped up that were talked about. Yeah, it could have been a lot shorter too. It's only, I think it's like about 400 pages, like 350. It's like 350 pages. It just ended really abruptly. But the next book I read is the second book in the Briar U series. So it was called The Risk, and I read this on my Kindle, and it was immediately like 20 times better. I enjoyed the characters a lot more, and they actually had a connection, and I liked the basis of their relationship. It was kind of enemies to lovers, but not entirely. There's fake dating, and it was just so good. I found like the connection that we had to the characters was also a lot better, I feel like. Oh, something else I forgot to say about this. She also tried to make the main character not superficial, like girl's girl, that kind of vibe, but it kind of just felt really fake and forced, which I didn't enjoy because it was like, I don't know. She didn't do a good job with that. Back to The Risk. It was great. That was my favorite Elle Kennedy book I've ever read. It was way better than any of the off-campus series books. I still really liked those, but this was just my best, like my favorite Elle Kennedy book. It was everything I needed and everything that I expected this book to be that it wasn't. So that was like a good, and I read it so much faster because I was just so much more invested, which I was really happy about. Okay, moving on. We got the big book for the month. Accorda Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. Obviously, this was the last book in the ACOTAR series, and I'm not going to say too much because it's obviously the 4th true book in the series. I don't want to spoil anything, but I did a lot of tabbing. There's a lot of just good vibes, I feel like. There's a lot of character growth and development, and we find a whole new connection as the reader to Nesta, especially. There was some spice, there was some politics and action towards the end of the book. Definitely the first, I'd say the first like 3/4 of it is less of that, and it's more just character based, but the politics and the world building and just all of that did happen was so good. And like all of her books, the last 100 pages were insane. This was obviously going to be a 5-star. I know a lot of people either really love this book or hate it. I just think it was a good, solid book. I didn't expect to hate it. I don't know why people do, because I still think it was really good. I do miss Feyre and Rhys's point of views, because there were some really big things that happened in this book for them that I wish I could be in their minds to learn about it and just see how that happened, but it's okay. I'll get over it. Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This was also a book that I did some tabbing with, and as you can see, there's a lot of purple. Purple is just like giddy, kicking my feet, like giggling to myself, happy. I was obsessed with this book. It was so good. Essentially, this book is about a kingdom, and there's trials every 5 years to, I don't even know what the point of the trials is, I'm not gonna lie, but the trials are every 5 years. This kingdom is made up of elites only, no ordinaries, so they have to have some kind of power, and main character Peyton is an ordinary, so she doesn't have any sort of powers, but she gets put into these trials, which kind of is giving Hunger Games, but a lot less intense, I feel like. And she's been spending a lot of time with Kai, who is the king's son and the future enforcer of the kingdom. So he's the one who goes out and kills off any of the ordinaries or anyone that does him wrong or the kingdom wrong. But there aren't allowed to be ordinaries in the kingdom because of various reasons. So essentially, he's like the hunter of the ordinaries, and she's an ordinary, but he can't know that, and he doesn't know that, and she's posing as an elite. It wasn't super heavy on fantasy. Like, the world building was definitely not hard to get into, and it did end on a bit of a cliffhanger. Not really. It kind of did. Oh, if you've read it, you know. You just know. It's just so good. I would read this again in a heartbeat. I think I could reread it literally tomorrow. It was so good. This was a 5-star. I don't know if I said that. Okay, moving on. Last book I read on my Kindle for the month was Divine Rivals. Who writes Divine Rivals? Oh, Rebecca Ross, I believe. I think I would give this, I think I technically rated it a 5-star in Goodreads. I think I'd give it like a 4.5. The first 50 pages were pretty slow, but by the time it picked up, it was just so good. I loved the romance aspect of it. I did enjoy the ending because it kind of wrapped up. It didn't leave it on a cliffhanger, but it definitely paved the beginning for obviously what the next book is, Ruthless Vows. And I really want to read that. The writing was really easy. It was a really quick book. There really wasn't that much magic talk. It's kind of like a fantasy, but it's mostly like gods and goddesses that are referenced. And then the only other magic that we really get exposed to, there's a couple things, but the main thing is just that the typewriter that our main characters are using is magic, so that they're able to send letters to each other. Yeah, I guess a quick little like synopsis is the main character, I already forget her name. The guy's name is Roman. Ivy? No. Iris. Iris's brother leaves at the beginning of the book to go fight in the war for one of the gods, and she gets a job at a journal to be a columnist. It's between her and Kit, Roman Kit, who are trying for the same position, and only one of them can get it. But she decides to write a letter to her brother and puts it under the wardrobe in her room, just kind of out of sight, to make it feel like she sent it to him, because she couldn't actually, like, she didn't know where he was in the war. And then she gets a response, and it's a letter from someone who she doesn't know, but it's Roman, and Roman knows that the message or the letter is from her, but she doesn't know that he's the one responding. They're just communicating through these letters. And then, yeah, I'm gonna stop there. It was such a good book. Roman is everything. And it was great. Like I said, I'm excited to read the next book. I don't know when that'll be wrapped up, more so in the romance section, and now it's a little bit more into the politics and the war. I have a feeling the majority of the next book's probably not going to be as romance focused, but that's okay. Last book of the month, I finally read Flawless by Elsie Silver. This is the first book in the Chestnut Spring series. It is a cowboy romance, grumpy sunshine, kind of. I would say maybe more enemies to lovers. Essentially, this bull rider, he had a scandal because he doesn't like milk. He essentially needs a babysitter until he's done competing for the season, because they need to make sure that he doesn't do or say anything that would put him in a bad light for all of his other sponsors to pull out as well, because one of his main sponsors was, I believe, a milk company, which is why it's like so controversial that he said that. So Summer moves in to his ranch, his family's ranch farm, and is watching after him. It was really good. I don't really have anything to say. I think I gave it like a 4-star, but I did really enjoy it. I like when romances aren't just romance. I feel like these types of books, it's more like surface level, but I like when there's like character development and like there's stuff with the characters that you really get into. I'm excited to read the next few books in the series. I don't really have, oh yeah, there's a one bed trope. We do love that. It was just, oh, and then there's like some other things at the end that you're like, oh my God, like that's insane, because you just aren't expecting it. I did really enjoy this. I didn't really care for the bull riding aspect, I'm not gonna lie, but I think that the country farm-esque setting was really cute and really fun. Just not a fan of the bull riding. I understand why people really like this series. And I'd never read anything by Elsie Silver. I did really enjoy the writing. It was so fast-paced. It was just really good style writing. So that is all the books that I read this January. I think it was honestly a pretty good reading month, so it was a really good start to the year. I definitely read a lot more than I even anticipated to be reading, but that is totally fine. Let's just hope that it continues. I'm hoping that it continues into this month, that it's a really good reading month. I think it already is, so that's a good sign. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and my thoughts on all these books. I will catch you next time. Bye.